joined Univision and started talking to them about 5 years ago, I really did not know much about novellas. As a non-Spanish speaker, a non-Hispanic, I had probably done what some of you had done. I'd flipped through them on fast forward or channel surfing. Maybe I'd seen a parody on Saturday Night Live or Modern Family, but I really did not know much about them. And that's something that we have found is true for a lot of our non-Hispanic clients and advertisers, agencies and advertisers. So as part of my role at the company, which is helping the general market, the non-Hispanics, understand Hispanic culture and values and media behavior, we've dug into novellas specifically and giving you this morning really what we call a novellacation to help you understand what it is about this genre that is so powerful, both in the United States and around the world. It's an enormously popular genre, but one you may not know much about if you're not a Spanish speaker. So along the way, I'm also going to give you some insights from some recent original research we did with our partners at Ipsos. Some of them are here among novella viewers, talk about the media behavior and what's going on. And the reason I think this is important is because it's really a unique entertainment genre that really doesn't have a close parallel in English language television. It's really Hispanic America's must-see TV. Soccer, news, novellas. Those are really the big three. And so I want to share with you something more about why this is such a unique Hispanic entertainment phenomenon. But I want to start by giving you a short montage, again, assuming that many of you are not regular viewers of novellas and maybe never have seen a novella, a short montage of some of the ones that are on today to set you the stage and give you a taste. We've heard a lot already this morning about fragmentation of media, and it's certainly true. But I want you to understand just how non-fragmented this genre is, despite all the options in Spanish and English language media. Across all day parts and all networks, not just Univision, 20 million people are consuming novella content every week. And about 7.5 million of that are men 12 and up, males 12 and up. So it's not just for women, and that may be one of the myths that you didn't understand. Let me give you a quick history. The first novellas were produced in Brazil, Cuba, and Mexico in the 1950s. I think it's interesting to think at the time that American television was launching with shows like I Love Lucy, Ed Sullivan. This is the sort of content you were seeing in some of these countries in Latin America. This one here, Senda Prohibida, was produced in Mexico in 1957 and 58, and it was the first novella to air in what became the typical airing pattern of Monday through Friday, an hour every day. And that really has become the typical format ever since. I love this image. I think it's very typical of novellas of their time, which are really more movie-like than TV shows. Again, think of the era of the 1950s, a time when Lucy wasn't allowed to say she was pregnant on CBS, and this was the sort of content we were seeing in Mexico. So you may have heard a shorthand. A lot of people will say, well, a novella, isn't that just a Spanish soap operas? No, it's not really an accurate comparison. Soap operas tend to have stars like Susan Lucci who stay in that their whole career. Fairly inexpensive production. A lot of sets were used over and over. Think about General Hospital and those waiting rooms. A high rotation of actors, the sort of replace the Darren sort of and a never-ending story. Look at General Hospital that's been telling that story since 1963. In contrast, novellas have really the top talent in prime time. They are the A-list actors of Latin American drama. It's lavish productions. When you think of that video I just showed you, look at how many scenes were outdoors, on boats, on beaches, in the mountains, and the waterfall. A lot of high production values. There's a core cast that goes through the entire series. And most importantly, these novellas have a beginning, a middle, and the end. A typical novella runs for about 150, 160 episodes, 5 nights a week, so it wraps up 5, 6, 7 months. It's very different from an endless sort of a soap opera. The premieres and the finales are highly anticipated among novella viewers, and in between there are so many plot twists and exciting storylines that people really do stay with us night after night. In terms of the themes of novellas, all of the great dramatic themes you might think of in movies you're familiar with have an analog in novellas. You have Cinderella stories, love triangles, sort of Romeo and Juliet stories of thwarted love. Those are very popular. Sibling rivalry, class struggles, stories of lost birthright, orphans, people who've lost their families, all very important in this genre. Like English language television, the content has adapted and become more contemporary over the years. Just in the last year, we've seen novellas with plot lines that include things like plastic surgery, the narcotics trade, a gay wedding, and women in power. All of themes, of course, that you wouldn't have seen in the 1950s, the 1960s, 70s, but really novellas are keeping up with modern life. We heard Ricardo talk about authenticity. I think that's a real example of what we see that today. We also see a lot of religious references in novellas. It's another touchstone to the predominantly Catholic Hispanic population. So the other thing that's very different from a soap opera in the way you may think about it is novellas always come to a satisfying conclusion with all the loose ends tied up. That's why the finales are so important. Really has a happily ever after ending, and that's very important to the novella viewer. The other thing I wanted to tell you about, and I have a great map that you'll have to picture, is that the best novellas are really worldwide phenomenons. Many of you may have heard of, okay, are we trying again? Aha, there we go. Thank you, and there's my map. Okay, great. So these stories can be so powerful that they really resonate around the world and not just in Spanish-speaking countries. The story you may have heard of is Ugly Betty, started as 1999 in Colombia as a novella called Yo Soy Betty La Fea. It was a story of an ugly duckling in the fashion industry, and it went on a global journey that we haven't seen the likes of before in 17 countries. It ran in Asia and Vietnam, in India and China, of course, enormous markets, in Eastern Europe, in Russia, in Georgia, Croatia, Poland, and the Czech Republic, and in Western Europe, in Greece, Belgium, and the Netherlands, all in addition to other countries in Latin America. It really speaks to the compelling nature of these stories, of the very best novellas and how the quality wins out. The very best novellas also stand the test of time. Think of a movie like An Affair to Remember or A Star is Born. A Star is Born was made originally in 1937, remade in 54, remade again with Barbra Streisand in 76. It's probably redue for another remake now for Gen Z. But the best novellas really stand the test of time and are remade again with new names, new actors, and contemporary settings. Our research said that about a third of our novella fans watch or say they watch because their mother and grandmother watched. These stories connect generations of Hispanic women. So to give you an idea of one of these classics, here's La Venganza, it was originally called. It's sort of a classic novella story. An orphan girl who goes to live with her grandfather, who's a humble ranch worker on a big ranch. She grows up, she falls in love with the son of the wealthy ranch owner. She gets pregnant, she is banished, although the good young son does not know this. She makes her way in the world, she raises her son, she becomes a successful hotel owner. The ranch family, meantime, falls into financial distress. They are forced to turn to her to get them out of the jam. She gets her revenge. She is reunited with her love, and it all ends, as I said, happily ever after. And it's been such a powerful story that has been remade most recently in 2013 as Corazon Indomitable. So that's sort of a typical novella that you may think about, but don't think that they are all exactly the same. There are a lot of genres even within the novella world. There are romantic comedies, there are teen and kid and young adult novellas, there are historical novellas, there are narco dramas, that's become a subgenre. Lots of different variations on the theme. So within this format of an hour a week in prime time, an hour a night in prime time, there's still a huge amount of flexibility in the sort of stories that can be told. And in this most recent survey we did, we found that romantic comedies, at least lately, have become their favorite, something that really goes to the top of what our novella viewers tell us that they're looking for. One of the key things that's very important in novellas are the Novella Stars themselves, and they really have a lot to do with the success or failure sometimes of an individual star. They are really equivalent to the Hollywood A-list for English language content consumers in this country. They're really the ones who Hispanic Americans know and love. So a William Levy is sort of like a Brad Pitt. Lucero. Lucero has a long career. She started as a child star in Mexico known as Lucerito. She's known as La Novia de Mexico, really Mexico's sweetheart. So think of her like a Meg Ryan or a Reese Witherspoon or a Sandra Bullock. It's that sort of person who people feel very engaged with. And when she got married in '97 to a singer, something like 40 million people in Mexico watched her wedding live, and millions followed the events in the United States as well. So that's the sort of engagement with the stars that we see among the Novellas fans. They are really, you could almost say, obsessed. Their Novella Stars' lives and loves and lovers are chronicled in the pages of magazines, Hispanic America's best-selling publications in Spanish. There's a magazine, TV y Novellas magazine. It's sort of Hispanic Americans' Us, if I can give you another equivalent. With a circulation of nearly 300,000, it goes behind the scenes to get the inside scoop, juicy tidbits about life and loves and gossip and fashion and everything else. William Levy was the sexiest man of the year in People en Español before he moved into sort of conventional, traditional English People a couple of years ago. William Levy is a great example of a crossover star who got his start in novellas and then moved on into English language mainstream media. Now remember I said that a novella is usually 5, 6, 7 months long. So here's a guy who, when his career got launched in novellas, he starred in 8 novellas in a period of 7 years. Think of how different that is than English language dramas. You could have a Patrick Dempsey playing, Doc McDreamy, that first season of Grey's Anatomy, and he's still playing that character, where William Levy in that same period moved from role to role, giving fans 8 different ways to see him, 8 different characters, 8 different plot lines. But he jumped, as more and more Hispanic stars are doing, particularly with the importance and the growing importance of Hispanics in this country. He first was in a J-Lo video, then a contestant on Dancing with the Stars on ABC. He's appeared in commercials from M&M's and Pepsi, very mass mainstream American products, and has 3 English language movies in production. And he's not the only novella star who's made it big in English language entertainment who you may have heard of. Selma Hayek got her start in novellas. So did Diego Boneta, Diego Luna, and Gael Garcia Bernal. All got their stars in novellas and all moving on to big Hollywood pictures today. Now, from that video I showed you, you may think that looks are the most important thing, and we certainly have a lot of good-looking people in novellas. But in this research we did, we dug into that a little. And what we found was looks were important, looks were certainly important, but really strong acting skills, charm, and intelligence. They told us over and over that they wanted a story they could connect to. They wanted characters who were believable, who were well-matched, heroes and villains, lovers, mothers and families. It had to have superior and strong acting skills. So that's a little about the content. Now let me talk to you a little about the fan. Now this is a made-up word, the novellero. It was something we made up to try to get our arms around this fan, the ones who are really passionate about novellas. We worked with Ipsos. They did a study of 450 Hispanic Americans who are novella viewers, light, medium, or heavy, and really dug into the whys and the behavior about these novelleros. But before I show you some of the data, let me me show you a few of them.
I get hooked.
She was watching Teresa and Triunfo del Amor, and I started watching them and I forgot how addictive they are.
Right now, I'm like infatuated with Cuando Me Enamoro, which is like Juan Soler's comeback, and I was obsessed with him in 8th grade.
It's just a drama. Women love drama.
Now, as an adult, I find it really connects my mother and I because we'll gossip about it, you know?
The characters, they very different. You always have the bad one that wants to kill somebody, somebody that's cheating.
They're a little, you know, over the top, but that's what I love because they're just so dramatic and the slapping and then whose baby is it?
When they make the remix, since you're already familiar with the story, you're like, oh my God, that soap opera was so good. Let's see it, let's see it.
And you know that there's like a very specific formula, but you still get sucked in.
But most importantly, it gives you hope at the end. They usually end with a really great ending.
With a novela, it keeps you there entertained like for 3 months or 4 months, and it's over. Then you watch another novela.
And you fall for it each and every time. I love it.
So we asked them themselves how they characterized themselves. 45% of them admitted that they were novella diehards or enthusiasts who really considered themselves addicted. That bit in the tape was something that came out of the research. Addiction was the sort of word we heard about. They watch them as often as they can. So why this tight connection? What do we think is really going on there? Ricardo talked earlier about the importance of connection, and we think that's a really important piece to the success for this enduring genre. People watch them with their families, and it's passed down from one generation to the next. Many Hispanic families gather together to watch the novellas during prime time, and we see high co-viewing in Nielsen, which is becoming much more unusual in a world of more and more screens, more and more fragmentation. Dinner, homework, bedtime, they tell us that those are all scheduled around when they can watch their favorite story. Certainly social media is becoming an important part of novellas, and I'll talk about that a little more. But we had some who said, you know, I don't take phone calls during my story, during that hour when I'm really caught up in the characters I love so much. I think one of the other reasons, or one of the ways you can see the enduringness of this, is catchphrases come up in novellas the way they would in an American sitcom or movie. So where you might hear an American somebody say, "You had me at hello," or "I'll have what she's having," we get those sort of statements, those sort of catchphrases grow out of novellas. My favorite in the last year or so was in one of the novellas we ran called Amores Verdaderos. There's Eliza Gonzalez said sort of dismissively to another character, "Haz clic y minimizate," roughly, click here and minimize yourself. And that became a little catchphrase for a while within the community. That's the source of those things. 8 out of 10 frequent novella viewers watch daily. Again, there's these shows move rapidly. Another reason not to think of them as soap operas, the idea of a soap opera was you could skip General Hospital all week and get caught up pretty quickly. What we're seeing is most of our novella watchers feel that they need to watch night after night. And they're not just following one. The Nielsen data and our own says that they're often following multiple stories at a time. So in some ways, binge viewing is not just a new Netflix English language phenomena. You know, somebody who's following 4 stories, watching 8 or 10 nights, that's a binge in a different way. Another myth you may think is that novellas are really for Spanish speakers, and that once Hispanics have been in the country, become a little more acculturated, learn more English, when the wide variety of English language content opens up to them, that they walk away from novellas. But in fact, again, looking at Nielsen, 24 of the top 25 programs viewed by bilinguals last season were novellas. So there's an enduring appeal even when they are free to watch or able to watch all the content that's available to them on all the sort of channels in Spanish and English. Why they watch, again, Two-thirds say novellas remind them of their country of origin, either because they've actually moved to this country as an immigrant, or it reminds them of their family's country of origin and their roots. But they also see it not as a reflection of real life in those countries, but it's really escapism, and that's a very important. And of course, they love the drama. So a little more about the consumption habits. We tend to think that there are shrinking numbers of sorts of programming that people want to consume live. Sports, weather, breaking news. But novellas are one of the other places where people still are consuming live. With cliffhangers and plot twists and a new show every night, novellas are virtually DVR-proof. 90% is done live by a highly engaged audience for that 5 or 6 month period. By comparison, and you've probably, many of you have seen this, 55% of all primetime English language TV viewing is time shifted today. So this is really a very different experience. And novellas are not niche. I talk about it as a genre, but don't let me mislead you that it is not a mass phenomena. In the last season's top 100 broadcast and cable shows among adults 18 to 49, novellas tend to fall right in the middle of the pack, even reflecting the fact that Hispanics are only about 17% of the television audience. So they're right in there with shows like Parenthood, Hawaii Five-0, Shark Tank, Nashville. And again, there's indication that there's something about novellas that's connecting with Hispanics that the English language shows are not doing. Again, total adult 18 to 49 viewers who watched primetime novellas last season, 94% didn't watch The Good Wife, 99% didn't watch Mad Men. Clearly they're finding something in these stories that they're not finding in other places, which makes us have a lot of enthusiasm for this genre as an ongoing basis. I mentioned co-viewing a little. We've talked, and we heard a lot already this morning, about the proliferation of new TV screens. Smartphones, tablets, all the different ways you can get content. But co-viewing still of novellas shows it's not entirely a solitary activity. 60% watch with a friend or family member. 1/3 of women viewers watch with a man. So again, another reason to think of this a little differently than you may have before. The other thing that's different is momentum. Again, think of a typical American drama. It can be very successful, may build its audience over time, maybe building a little faster now, in season maybe 2 or 3, and then gradually erode until it's taken off the air in year maybe 5 or 6. In contrast to that, novellas tend to build momentum over time. Here are a couple of our novellas that ran last year, and you see how they peaked with their highest audiences at the end as we built to those very satisfying finales. But again, it's more than TV content. While watching a novella on TV is still the most popular way that people consume this sort of content, growing numbers watch classic novellas via Hulu, on demand, or online, such as our own digital video network, Uvadeos, or other platforms. Novellas currently make up 85% of all the total Univision views on Hulu and on Univision On Demand. And because it's such an engaging content, you may not surprise you to know that social has started to play a role in novellas as well. Our Facebook Novellas fan site has 1.7 million followers the last time I checked. And it's not just about the plot, although there's plenty of talk about that. They're chatting about the stars themselves, the fashion, the gossip, what's coming next. There's a lot to engage them there. And they're talking about it in Spanish and in English on Facebook and Twitter, which again shows us the appeal to the bilingual audience. But what about marketers? I've been talking completely from the view of the viewers. What about marketers? Do they find this sort of content appealing, and why? And because we took a look at our advertisers and talked to them, there are about 7 reasons that they think are powerful. One is it's a mass reach of an unduplicated audience. So there are a lot of people watching novellas who you would not easily find in other sorts of programming. 90% live viewing means ads tend not to be skipped, which becomes rarer and rarer today. Co-viewing, it's great if you have a joint purchase. If you want to talk about a car, you want to talk a major appliance, you got your two decision makers watching the show live together and maybe even discussing the ad. Found that advertisers like to be associated with these satisfying, happily ever after endings. The fact that the viewers are passionate, Nielsen's brand effect shows that when you're passionate about the programming, you tend to pay more attention to the advertising. So advertisers like that. We find that there's an implied endorsement from these A-list stars that they follow so much, and that rubs off the halo on the brand. And finally, there are cross-platform opportunities that are difficult to find in other sorts of genres, and I have a little case study of something GM did for a novella called Eva Luna 2 seasons ago. So how's that for product placement, right? The story built around the Buick and really did very well, and something the advertisers got very excited about. So if I can leave you with a few thoughts before I take some questions, I hope you understand that novellas are more than simply a Mexican version of American soap operas. There's a lot more to them than that. They're far richer and have some special qualities that are so important. Remember that the data shows the strength of this genre: daily viewing, little time shifting, worldwide appeal, mass reach, social engagement. But I would also urge you not just to take my word for it. 2 years ago, Univision made the decision to close caption its primetime novellas in English, so I'd encourage you to go to our channel, get hooked, and you may find that you become just as addictive and just as much of a novellero as these. I think we have a few minutes for questions. In terms of the male viewers, a little more interested in drama, a little more interested in the active conflict, the fights. I mean, some of that you could expect, but not all of them were very different. Some of them, the issues about my country of origin, a satisfying conclusion, that was shared between men and women. Yeah. All right, I'll leave you to lunch. Thank you very much.